Welcome, welcome, everyone. Here we are on the first Friday of every month where we get to have a career strategy session. And it's so exciting to be in the space. I've got multiple things happening. I'm on LinkedIn Live right now, which is exciting. And I'm also on Zoom. So for those of you who are joining me in the Zoom room, it's great to see you and I welcome you. And for those of you who are joining me in LinkedIn Live in audio, it's super great to see you and I welcome you too. We are across time zones, so it's good morning, good afternoon, and to some of those who might be joining us, it might even be a good evening. My name is Licia Dewing, and I'm a career strategist. And the reason why I enjoy hosting these First of Friday career strategy sessions is twofold. Firstly, it gives me a space and a place and a venue to engage with you, to speak, to share, to ask questions, to find out more about what you need. And secondly, it's because it gives me the opportunity to share some bite-sized mindset and action steps with you to challenge you to take this through the next month until we take this through the month until we meet again for the next first Friday of the month career strategy session. So it's really twofold plan and process, and at the same time, twofold space of speaking in Zoom and speaking on LinkedIn Live. For those of you who don't know me, I'll just do a very quick introduction. As I said, my name is Licia Dewing. I'm a career strategist. I'm based in Cape Town, in South Africa, and I work across the globe with helping people revolutionize their career, because I believe that you can create a career that you love and you 100% can own your career and can craft your work for purpose. And the reason why I believe that is because this was my story. 10 years ago, I was stuck, I was frustrated, and I was certainly not in a situation or a position of owning my career or understanding how to use my values to inform my career. And I decided to become the person that I needed. I career strategized myself back to my purpose, and now I teach people how to do exactly that in mindset and action steps throughout a dedicated framework. Basically, I help you figure out who you are, I help you tell the world who you are, and I help you find those people in the world who want who you are. If you'd like to find out more, I invite you to go onto my LinkedIn profile. You can book complimentary career strategy connect call with me, 25 minutes, and we can get to know each other a little bit more personally, and I can share a bit more about what I do. But today, right now, you're attending a free career strategy session for the first Friday of the month. Before we get into things and start talking about values, I'd like to know who is completely new to me versus who's perhaps been in my circle, been in my tribe, or attended one of these sessions before. It would be great if you're listening on LinkedIn Live, you've got a reaction emoji. You could just give me a thumbs up if you're new. And if you are not new, you're in my tribe, you can give me a nice big red heart. That'll be cool to see. And while if you're on Zoom, you can share in the comments. Yes, Chris, some newbies. Nice to meet the newbies, and some red hearts and some people. So if you're on Zoom and you're in my tribe, just post tribe. Lovely to see some comments coming through and everybody responding. So good, seems like everything's working. Certainly seems like everybody can hear me. Let's get into things. So values, what are they? How do we define them? Why is it so hard to figure out what our unique core values are, and how do we use them or understand them in relation to our career. That's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to share some mindset and action steps with you. So it's not just a lot of listening. There is going to be some doing after this. And if you stay till the end, I'm going to share a small personal challenge that I hope you will all take up. So before I start, I do have one ask of you. I'd like you to be all here, all present, and try and switch off distractions. I know that these times of 2024 April, so much is going on. Many of you couldn't attend live and you're going to be listening to the replay, and I understand that and I get it, but there's magic in taking action and pitching up live, and I want to reward those who are here and who are live. But this is what I want to ask. Be present, be 100% focused. You're investing your time, which is the most precious resource that you have. And I honor this time for you and both myself. So engage your active listening. But here's the ask. Take notes of what triggers you and what you want to take away. Don't just listen and allow the information to kind of waft over you and then you move on. I want you to actually take notes specifically of what triggers you, because a trigger is information that's leading you to discover something. And obviously things that you are interested and excited and ignited by, you're going to take notes of takeaways too. So just right now on a notepad, write down on the left takeaways and on the right triggers. And consider what's there, because there is information that can come to you from that. I'm going to share some interesting things. I hope I'm going to challenge you, and I hope I'm going to educate and inspire you. But at the end of the day, you're your own guru. You're the guru of your career. I believe that we all have this inner light, this inner guidance, this inner knowing, our own guru-ness, and that's what you need to let lead. Extrapolate what I might say, taken what I'm going to share with you, take those notes, but ultimately, you need to apply this specifically and directly for you and your situation and where you are now. You're the best fit. You're the best guidance to yourself. And I'm really here to show up on the first Friday in the career strategy session to get you thinking about your values, to get you questioning them, and to some of us, reignite them, and to those perhaps who haven't yet identified them, to identify them. So you're going to note your takeaways and your triggers, and you're going to know that what I share, you're going to take what's right for you. You're going to extrapolate because you're the best guru of yourself and your career. So let's get started. Thank you to everybody who's shared some thoughts and comments in the chat on Zoom and everyone in the LinkedIn room. Let's jump in. So what is a value? A value by definition is a deeply held belief or principle that guides and informs our attitudes, behaviors, and decisions. Values basically serve as a fundamental aspect of our identity, and they play an important role in shaping the professional and the personal choices that we make. Values can encompass a wide range of ideals, from ethical standards to moral virtues to philosophical, religious, personal preferences. They can encompass all of that. They reflect our priorities, our aspirations, and ultimately they influence how we perceive and interact with the world. In short, values is really just the label that we use to describe what's important to us and what we care about most in the world. Our values are often shaped by factors which include how we were raised, the culture that we were raised in, our religion, the education system that we went through, our life experiences. Values are completely unique to us. They're deeply unique and personal. They could be abstract concepts such as integrity and honesty and compassion, or they could be something more concrete like family, health, personal growth. Regardless of their specific nature, in this career strategy session, we don't really have time to unpack the different nuances of values. We really are just going to focus on what they are, why it's so hard to identify them, how to identify them, and how to work with them. So essentially, a value is understanding what's important to you, knowing how to work with that in order to guide ourselves through our careers and through life. So if values are this important internal guidance system, if values are so essential, if they're such an important part of who we are, why is it so hard for us to identify them? Why is it that if you turn to a colleague, a friend, or a partner and say, hey, tell me about what your values are, most people, most adults will go, oh, give me a second. What do you mean? Let me think about that. The reason being is that our society doesn't emphasize the importance of us doing the self-reflection work and identifying them. You know, our parents didn't necessarily have this knowledge to pass on to us. Most of us certainly weren't taught in school how to develop the self-reflection habit of understanding our values. You probably weren't asked on interview or, in the job process of what your values are. And I doubt whether your current employers might have pegged your annual performance reviews on how you are best using your values. So it's quite fascinating that the concept of values, this internal guiding principle, is so necessary and so important, yet so hard to identify, simply because the world doesn't put that emphasis on us. Yes, we know that there's self-reflection, self-development. We know these principles, and the career development, career coaching industry is massive and huge. And those of us who choose to invest in that perhaps have the opportunity of developing our values. But it's fascinating to me in a meta sense that the very thing we need, how we're raised, how we're brought up, doesn't necessarily call us to develop it, yet we would have learnt our values from our parents. We would have learnt our values from how we were educated, the school we went to, religious leaders that we might have looked up to, the society around us, the ecosystem that we grew up in, we would have extrapolated our values from. Some of us probably would have rebelled against certain of those values at certain times when we learnt more about ourselves and as our world developed. I certainly know as a teenager, I rebelled against all the values that my parents would have enforced on us. Who here would agree with that? That values come to you, and yet at the same time, there's this lack of understanding, but these are the important principles and beliefs that form the foundation upon who we are, how we build our career, and identifying what's most important to us in the workplace. So I want to quickly just run through 6 reasons why we don't know them. And I'm starting with the negative of why it's hard to identify them and why we don't know them, because that helps inform how we then develop them. I'm going to get to sharing how to identify your values in 2 ways, externally and internally. And I'm going to share some really kind of granular principles to identify your values. But let's just cover why we don't know them. So the first, as I described, was really lack of understanding. The world that we live in doesn't place emphasis on what are your values, unless we've had special guidance or special influences who have. So of the 6 reasons why we don't know them, number 1, complete lack of understanding. We didn't know we needed a thing called values, or that this inner guidance system was there to support us. And I put a post out yesterday on LinkedIn. I'd love you to all go and have a look and comment on it, because then I can see that you're there. But it was really about had I have known at the beginning of my career that I had this inner guidance system, how different things would have been. And I'm sure that probably resonates with many of you. For those of you in the Zoom room, I'd love you to let me know in the chat. Does that resonate? Would you agree? Is there a sense of, had you have known something about your values at the inception of your career, at the start of your career, would that have changed? And for everyone who's in the LinkedIn Live, raise a hand, give me a reaction if that is how you feel. So, lack of understanding. Yeah, Corbus, I agree. Jackie, 100% I agree. And in the Zoom room, in the chat, oh, I need to open the chat. Absolutely, 100%. Had we have known, Melissa and Chris, Tabocho, yeah, what are our values, we probably would have saved ourselves a lot of pain and frustration in our career journey. But this is not about self-flagellation or how wrong we were. It's really just knowing we weren't equipped with that knowledge. It wasn't our fault. We didn't know it. So 6 reasons why we don't know our values. Lack of understanding. Second reason, number 2, cultural conditioning. Often, society imposes values on us. Our companies impose values on us, from challenging us, the external imposed values don't necessarily align with our own intrinsic values. I know that I've been in work environments where the company has touted a list of values, which, number one, they've not necessarily lived. So that's another whole conversation, how companies can have values that they're not actually walking the talk with. But the point here is how culturally conditioning society tries to put values on us, and companies can put values on us. I think it's important to be aware of that. Just because somebody else values something doesn't mean that you need to yourself. Third reason of not knowing them is limited self-awareness. And self-awareness is separate to understanding. Self-awareness is about doing the work, the introspection, the self-reflection, to understand who you are, know yourself, and move from that place of knowing. No one on this call today is going to go forth after this conversation into that lack of self-awareness, because I'm going to share specific tools with you. You're going to have in your hand tools to be able to understand your values and what that means to your career. Fourth reason why it's hard to understand our values and why we don't know anything about them is because of conflicting priorities, such as, career aspirations that collide with family expectations, or personal goals which don't collide or align with career aspirations. So conflicting priorities can put us in a quandary of, on the one hand, we value freedom, flexibility, and personal growth, yet family values require us to provide stability, security, and financial development for our family units. So conflicting priorities often create this quandary of not really being able to understand what our values are. The fifth reason why many of us aren't able to pinpoint our values is because of fear of judgment. Rejection from families, peers, society, colleagues, you name it. We sometimes choose to suppress what's most important to us, opting instead to conform to what everyone else thinks. Similar a bit to the cultural conditioning, but it's a real thing. When you get to the point, when I get to the section of sharing how to uncover your values, consider, has the fear of judgment been something that's held you back from really understanding what they are? Or do you know what they are, but it's been about not being able to share that openly within your team's social and professional settings? The sixth and last reason that I'm going to cover of why it's hard for us to know what our values are is because of changing life circumstances. Careers are never a straight line, neither is life, and what we valued in our 20s certainly evolves and changes as we grow and age. So identifying your values is an ongoing process. Yes, it's something that relies on self-reflection and self-knowledge, but that will shift and change as you develop and as you grow. And in fact, um, particularly to the woman here on this call, we know quite fundamentally that when we become parents, when we become mothers, our values change completely. Absolutely, it does for the men too, but not as obvious as it does for the woman amongst us. So those are 6 reasons why it's hard for us to know them. Lack of understanding, don't even know what a value is, cultural conditioning, society imposing something on us, limited self-awareness, not knowing how to do the uncovering, the work and the self-reflection, conflicting priorities, fear of judgment, and changing life circumstances. So those are the 6 reasons why it's hard to identify our values. And now let's move on to how to figure them out. Whether you know what your value is, your values are, or whether you need to actually reignite your values. So you might be on this call because you resonated with career strategy, let alone the values section of it. You might be on this call because you resonated with, I don't know what my value is, or I know that I'm not working according to my values and I want to figure them out. Or you might be on this call because you know that the values that you have, you've moved away from and you need to reignite them. So let's look into how we can go about figuring out our values. And before, the one thing that I wanted to say that's so clear, and it's really that kind of bucket of cold water moment for me, is if everything is a value, then nothing really becomes a priority. You prioritize those things in your life and your work that you value. So I am going to challenge you to get granular. I am going to challenge you to really do the work to drill down into what could this, what could your core values be? As I said at the beginning, I'm going to share 2 different ways of understanding your values to meet both the needs of everybody and the diverse group of people that we're talking to and everyone who's going to catch us on replay. And the first way is understanding your values by looking internally. And I'm going to share 3 ways to do that. The second is then going to be understanding your values by looking externally, which seems like a bit counterintuitive, but stick with me and we'll get there. And I'm going to share 4 steps in which you do that. So the internal way, both are right, both are relevant, both are important, but both aren't necessarily going to resonate with everyone at the same time. And I think it's important to be able to meet you in terms of from developing a mindset perspective at wherever you might be. I know that self-reflection, quiet contemplation is not necessarily the best way for some of us to learn. It is important and it is a process we need to acknowledge, but some of us are at certain life stages where we simply can't quietly go into our mind. We need the support of others. So the external understanding your values process will help. And for those of you who are accustomed to quiet contemplative self-reflection, the internal will work specifically for you, and maybe the external won't. So I'm going to get into both of those. Before I do, I am just going to take a quick sip of water, and I'd love to know from you here. I get that you're here to find out more about your values. Has anyone done value determining understanding work previously? I'd like to kind of gauge the room. For those of you who are on the Zoom call, you could perhaps just share in the chat. Yes, you have. No, you haven't. And for those who are listening, give me a thumbs up if you have done some value focus work. Thank you, Jackie. That was a thumbs up. And for those who aren't sharing anything on the LinkedIn Live audio, I'll take it that you haven't. Tebogo, thank you. You have. Okay. Right. So I'm talking quite specifically to everybody else. Jackie and Tebogo, this is a refresher. Firstly, understanding your values by looking internally. So this is the quiet contemplation version, and it's about sitting in total silence, going within and writing down a whole list of qualities that you value. And don't worry about, is this right? Is this wrong? There is no right or wrong answer. It simply is what is right for you. You're just going to write these out. So it could be, you might want to say travel, spirituality, learning, leisure, flexibility, adventure, balance, friendship. Just write down a bunch of words that come to you when it comes to the concept of values. So this is looking internally to draw out what you value. Quiet contemplation and writing them down. If you feel like you want access and resources, there's a huge amount of information online. I'd like to direct you to Brene Brown's Dare to Lead Values List. She has a particular resource there. James Clear has also developed a core values list. I think he's got a 50s core values list that you can work from. I also found, in preparation for this call, the Berkeley Wellbeing Institute has over 300 value words. And then there's Dr. John DeMartini and a whole bunch of coaches and consultants who offer lists of values. So basically what you're looking for is words which describe values. If you start with 300 or you start with 10, you simply want to prioritize those which are most important. So if you're simply doing the quiet contemplative exercise of writing these words down, you're literally just going to jot down a whole bunch of words that come to you, and then you're going to delete or order the ones that are, most important, put them in order of preference. I will share a post later today that sums up this information. In fact, everybody who's registered for this call will get the resources that I mentioned, Brene Brown, James Clear, and the Berkeley Wellbeing Institute, because you're going to get access to the replay. If you're pitching up on the LinkedIn Live and you haven't registered, go into the comments and you'll see there's a Calendly link where you can then get access, register, which means that you're joining an email list and I'll be able to send you this information. So the first then is to write down a core list of values. The second piece to that internal contemplation is to draw out a personal value statement where you would actually write something around those words. So for example, if you started off with 10 words and you whittled it down to your core value should be anything less than 5, and you ended up with 5. Say it's teamwork, belonging, loyalty, simplicity, and health. You would then write out a sentence to yourself, which becomes a personal value statement around why that's important. There is no right or wrong answer here. This is really the mindset process of self-reflection. So you would say, my health is important to me because it gives me the vehicle of accessibility to live a vibrant life. That's a personal value statement. Health is a value. You write out a sentence to that. Is everybody following me? Have I got everyone? Am I losing anyone? Are you all on it and getting it and writing down your notes? Thumbs up on the Zoom call. Great. Thank you, Chris. And some thumbs up in the LinkedIn audio. Great. Let's move on. Time is marching on. So understanding your values internally is to just draft down self-contemplative words that are core values and refine those to 5 and then write out a personal value statement. Another way of looking internally that I've picked out for you, and there are many different ways, but I want to share this specifically with you, is to follow what brings you excitement in your work. So self-reflection around what is it that you most feel inspired to do? What pushes you to move forward? What inspires you to take action? Follow the path of curiosity and excitement to understand what some of your core values are. So, for example, are you motivated or excited by earning a big bonus? Are you excited to take action because you're going to learn a new skill? Or are you more inspired and excited through the thought of knowing that your work is going to impact the lives of many people? Or are you excited by the fact and motivated that your work is going to leave a legacy that many people will then plug into and use? So step 2 of internal, understanding your values internally, is follow what excites you. Again, there's no right or wrong answer here. Write down a list of things that excite you in your work. Then extrapolate what could be a core value there. Money, learning, legacy, impact. And then narrow that down or prioritize that to 5. If you battle to get to 5, it's okay. I've got more resources for you to work with, but start with this. And both these internal reflective exercises you can return to, and you can do them again and again. First time you do it, it might not be great. Second time you do it, it'll be better, and it'll certainly improve. So follow your excitement to extrapolate what could be a value, and then commit to writing a personal value statement. So write a short sentence on what each of these values that come from your excitement mean to you. And there you have a personal value statement. How does that sound? That's covering and understanding your values by looking internally. We're going to move on to the external. Just want to do a quick read the room and check. Are we good with that? Is everyone thumbs up? Yes? Good. Thank you. And ready to move on to the external. So this is a fun exercise on the external. And there are 2 elements to this. And the first is looking externally to the people that personify values that you, or the people that you love, admire, and respect, who live values that you then see in yourself. Sorry, I didn't describe that very well. What I mean is the first step is to look at your close contacts, look at your family, your friends, and your colleagues. Who do you admire? Who do you look up to? And consider, what is it about them that I admire? That gives you a value. So here's how this can land. You might have a grandfather who you admire for his acceptance and generosity. You then are seeing in him the values of acceptance and the value of generosity that form part of your core values. So that's what you're going to write down. You might have a colleague who you admire for their focused listening skills. So you're going to write down listening or attention. You might have a friend who you deeply love and admire for her or his loyalty towards you and your family and your community. So you're going to put down loyalty. So this list of close friends, family, and colleagues, in my work, I refer to these as your champions. So you're going to write down a champions list of people that you know. And what do you admire in them? Identify, what do they embody that you admire about them? And this gives you a clue of what your values are. And then you'll do the process as you did of the internal introspection, self-reflection one, is you're going to prioritize those into at least a minimized kind of stick to 5, and then you want, most important to least important. You might say to me, and I know that this happens, is you might say, but Lisa, all 5 of them are important. Of course they are, but one's a little bit more important than the other. Just try and write them in a 1 to 5 level. All 5 are important, but just try and order them. That gives you a straight sense of understanding of around what your core values are. And then the other way of understanding what your values are by looking externally is to look to your heroes to uncover your values. What I mean by heroes, these are people out in the world who are doing amazing things who you do not know personally, but you admire. Nelson Mandela is a great example to all of the South Africans here, who is an incredible hero. So what is it that I admire in him? What is it that I see in him that makes him a hero for me? Is it because he fought for social justice? Is it his commitment to an ability to forgive others, his commitment to fighting for a democratic South Africa? What is it about him that I look up to and I admire? That then becomes my value. So identify the specific and values embodied in your heroes, list them in an order of importance, and whittle it down to just 5. That's the second way of finding your values, through looking externally. So to those of us who joined us in the room and the LinkedIn Live, thank you for joining. Just a quick refresh. I'm Licia Dewing. I'm a career strategist. We're talking in the first Friday of the month career strategy session. And today is all about values. And I've just shared ways in which you can identify your values. You can identify your values by looking internally, which is self-contemplation, understanding your core values, writing a number of those elements down, and then extrapolating that to develop a personal value statement. Or another way is to follow your excitement. What inspires you at work? What pushes you to take the most action? What is it that you feel most excited about? Look at what that is, and then extrapolate a core value and commit to writing that into a short sentence, which becomes a personal value statement. The other way that I've shared to look and identify your values is to look externally. And I shared the strategy of developing a list of champions, friends, colleagues, family members who you admire, love, and respect. What is it about them that you admire, love, and respect? Write all those qualities down. That will give you a set of values. Once you've got the quality, I want you to convert that into a personal value statement. Write a short sentence on what that value means to you. And the other way of looking externally is to identify your values by looking at your heroes. Let's call it your heroes list. Who are the people out in the world doing amazing things that you absolutely admire? They're your heroes list. You'd love to meet them. Why? What is it that they embody? What do you admire in them? Write it out and then extrapolate that into values and connect that to a personal values statement. So I'm going to pause here and invite any questions. On LinkedIn Live, that means that you put your hand up and I add you to the stage, which might be a bit scary for some. You don't have to ask me a question if you don't want to, but if you do have a burning question that you want to ask, please do raise your hand. And same applies in the Zoom room. If anybody wants to ask a question around how to identify your values, looking internally or externally, now is the time. And I'll pause for a few minutes and take another sip of water. And just double check. And we'll move swiftly along. So good. You're writing down your takeaways, you're writing down your triggers, and you're making some notes of how to identify your values by looking internally and looking externally. Where we are now then is to connect this to how it lands in your career. And a couple of you shared some questions with me prior to the session that I'm going to quickly run through, seeing as we don't have any live questions here. Some of the questions that I had, and I'm going to take a stab at just one of these so that we can move on to rounding off with the challenge and the action step. Let me have a look here. I've started a new role and I'm keen on maximizing the opportunities I have available within my organization. I want to ensure that I am aligned with my values. So, in other words, this not so much a question, more a statement. They've moved into a new company. They want to make sure they stay on track within their career. They're excited about the opportunity that they have, but they want to maximize everything that allows them to grow. Understanding your values is obviously going to be able to support you with that. Knowing what's important to you and what's important to you in that growth and how to embody that is going to help set you up for that. You're not going to be conditioned or accept a value that doesn't resonate with you. You've already said that maximizing opportunities, growing within your career is important. So your values are about personal development, growth, learning, and everything else. You're not necessarily referring to monetary rewards, but look at what that is. What is maximizing opportunities mean for you? Is it more people to manage? Is it senior leadership? Is it more money? What is it that specifically, unpack what that thought is to be able to guide you towards knowing the value that can support you. You know, Dr. John DeMartini, who has an amazing process called the value determination process and has been an incredible mentor to me in my career, talks about when you understand what your values are, you live a life of flow. When you understand and connect to your core values, you're able to move successfully and with ease to the very thing that you want. So knowing what I said about how hard it is to identify our values and why, there's 6 reasons why we don't know what our values are, all of you here on this call are going to be able to embed the process of looking internally or looking externally and then applying it to your career. So let's get to that. Now that you've got these personal value statements, now that you've understood what your values are, where do you go from there? Well, you can incorporate those words into your CV, into your LinkedIn profile. You can incorporate those words into your conversation, into your reviews, into interviews. Take that personal value statement and see how you can actually live it, how you can walk the talk of knowing these values and incorporate them into what you do. In my LinkedIn post yesterday, what I shared was start by identifying work content values, work relationship values, and work environment values. So here's my challenge to you as we get to nearing off the end of this time together. I've shared why it's important, how hard it is to identify what our values are, how hard it is to identify them, and ways in which you can identify them, looking internally and looking externally. Now, my challenge to you is to break those down into work content values, meaning the tasks that you perform. What do you enjoy? What's important to you in how you perform your work? So the work process. Second area is work relationship values, meaning the interactions that you have with colleagues, clients, service providers, and people, meaning the work relationship values. So who you interact with, what's important within those interactions. And then the third area to categorize your values in relation to your career would be your work environment values, meaning your workplace, pertaining to the setting, the environment, the culture. So it's work process, work people, work relationships, and workplace. How the environment that you work in, the, you know, having quiet pods versus having an open plan space, having directors in a C-suite that you can't reach versus having all the team sitting around a table, working remotely versus working actually in an office setting. What are the values? If you can, once you've identified your values, if you can really start to get quite granular and divide them into those 3 areas, work, process, place, and people, that further informs how you're able to use them in your career and how you're able to power your career with them. So we're wrapping up. Time is marching on. It's amazing what happens when you run a session and people join it. It just seems to put like that time on fast forward. But I'm available for any thoughts, questions, or concerns. Anybody who wants to ask anything before I wrap up in the Zoom room, if there's any hands up, don't worry, no pressure. You certainly don't have to ask anything if you don't want to. I love that you're here and you're listening. You're welcome to DM me afterwards or respond on email. And in the LinkedIn audio room, LinkedIn Live, if anybody has a question, raise your hand, and that means that I add you to the stage, which might feel a little bit daunting, but you're welcome to ask any question of me. Thank you, Melissa, for that. Not a question, just a thought. So here's my challenge to you. Figure out what your values are. Use both the internal and the external. One's going to resonate more than other, or perhaps they both will. But between now and the next first Friday career strategy session, which will be Friday, the 3rd of May, I want you to know what your values are, and I want you to own them. Do more than just understand them, but practice them. Walk the talk. Use the mindset knowledge of knowing now what is a core value and actually put it into action. Whether that means as you're standing at the checkout queue with the fantastic person at Checkers, Woolies, or wherever, and you say to them, do you know that I value freedom, flexibility, and this is my personal value statement? I say that loosely. It's always great when you start practicing the words and you put it out into the world. Look for opportunities that you can share your values. Tell your family, tell your team, tell your colleagues, tell your friends. Use the language of talking through your values, because that then starts to energetically tell the people around you what you hold important, what you want. And when you know what your values are, when you know what your intentions are, it guides your thoughts, your words, your behaviors, and your action. And you can truly align with those beliefs. And if you're able to speak through your values, you're able to attract more of those values to you. If you know where you're heading, you can direct and create the career that you want. This is not about, careers are not about climbing ladders from one rung to the next until you reach success according to what the company defines and just working hard. That is not what a career is. A career is doing exciting, inspiring work that both supports you, that gives you what you need, and allows you to really set your soul on fire and ignite the light within you and share it with the world. We find ourselves at different stages of needing a job, developing a career and moving towards a calling, and that's absolutely fine. That's what the journey of life is, and that's what the journey of a career is. It's never a straight line. Some of you here might be moving towards your calling. Some of you here might simply need a successful, comfortable job that's going to give you what you need, or a better job than what you have. And some of you might be putting together this thing called a career. Values are going to help you. And I know that at the beginning, it's going to be hard. In the middle, it's going to be completely messy, as Robin Sharma says, but in the end, it's going to be magnificent. And if you can commit just this, commit to knowing what your values are. And between now and next Friday's career strategy session, which I hope everybody here will join, you'll get notification of what it is and what the theme is and what we're going to talk about. Come with some thoughts around your values. Send me a DM. Let me know what you found, what your triggers, what your takeaways were from this session. You know, staying stuck, frustrated, not being happy, not knowing what to do in your career and feeling muddled is part not your fault. But when you know that there's something called values that can guide you to something more satisfying within your career, it becomes your fault if you're not committed to take action. And when you take action around a mindset, you expand into your potential and you truly own your career. And that's what that's being a revolutionary. That's what a career revolution is about. So as I close off now, I'd love you all to share on my LinkedIn post from yesterday. If you want to, if you don't enjoy that visibility, send me a DM, respond to me on email. However, send me a smoke signal over Table Mountain if you have to. However you get the information, come back and let me know. Feel free to tell me what your biggest trigger is. Feel free to tell me what your biggest takeaway is, but share with me and let me know what you took from today. It'll help guide me in creating first of Friday's career strategy sessions that are meaningful and important, but certainly help move you forward. So thank you to everyone who joined. Thank you to my group of Zoom room people. Thank you, thank you. It was really lovely to see you here in that intimate space. And thank you to everybody in the LinkedIn Live. It was super great to connect with you there. Just a couple of comments and some questions here. Thank you, very insightful, a lot to think about. Amazing how internal and external processes merge to create similar values. Yes, very much so. Thank you to those who registered and they couldn't attend live. I get it, life happens, but there's a magic in showing up. And to everybody listening here, hearts and thumbs up, commit to doing the work. April's going to be done before you know it. Figure out what your values are and share with me and let me know. And I'll see you next first Friday career strategy session, which will be Friday the 3rd of May. If you want to find out more, make sure that you're on my email list. You can do so by connecting, subscribing, registering, or simply sending me a DM. It would be great to have you in my community. And thank you. I've enjoyed this. It's been great. And I'm going to end off now. So thank you all and goodbye.